The rancher took the Apache girl to his ex's wedding. She asked, "How should I introduce myself?" He had lived on the ranch for so long that silence felt normal to him. Every morning the rancher woke before the sun, pulled on his boots and stepped outside to the smell of dust, grass, and animals. The land was wide and open, but his life felt narrow, shaped by habits he never questioned. He worked, ate, slept, and repeated the same days again and again. People in the nearby town thought he was strong and steady, but inside he carried a quiet loneliness he never spoke about. Years earlier, he had been engaged to a woman from town. Everyone had believed they were perfect together. She liked plans, order, and a future that looked safe and predictable. At the time, he thought that was enough. But slowly, without loud fights or clear reasons, something faded between them. They stopped really listening to each other. One day, she left. Later, he heard she was doing well, building a new life. He told himself he had moved on, but the truth stayed buried under his daily work. The ranch struggled that year. A dry season made everything harder and he needed help. Through a local connection, a young Apache woman came to work on the ranch. She didn't say much at first. She arrived with a small bag, calm eyes, and a posture that showed quiet strength. She was not there to impress anyone. She was there to work. From the first day, she proved herself. She learned fast, handled the animals with care, and never complained even when the work was heavy. The rancher noticed her focus. She did not rush, but she never wasted time either. When problems came up, she thought before acting. He respected that. They spoke little in the beginning. Most of their communication happened through simple instructions or short comments about the weather and the animals. But over time, small conversations grew naturally. Sometimes they shared a meal outside after a long day. Sometimes they sat in silence, watching the sky change colors. Those quiet moments felt easier than words. The Apache woman had her own reasons for being there. She came from a close community where family and tradition mattered deeply. She had learned early how to stand on her own, how to be careful in unfamiliar places. She had experienced people making assumptions about her before she even spoke. Because of that, she kept a certain distance, observing more than she revealed. The rancher noticed this but did not push. He had learned that forcing closeness only pushed people away. Instead, he showed respect in small ways. He listened when she spoke. He never talked down to her. He paid her fairly and thanked her for her work. These things mattered to her more than he realized. As weeks passed, the ranch began to feel different. The work was still hard, but it felt lighter. The rancher found himself looking forward to the days more than before. He laughed more, even at small things. He noticed details again. The sound of footsteps on dirt, the way the wind moved through grass. The Apache woman noticed the change too, though she didn't comment on it. She simply shared the space with him, steady and present. One afternoon, while sorting mail, the rancher saw an envelope that made his chest tighten. It was an invitation. His ex was getting married. The date was soon. The town name on the card felt heavy, full of memories he thought he had left behind. He stood there for a long time, holding the envelope, unsure how he felt. He was not angry. He was not sad. But something old stirred inside him. That evening, he couldn't focus on work. His thoughts drifted back to the past, how things ended without real closure, how he never asked himself what he truly wanted. The Apache woman noticed his distraction. When she asked if something was wrong, he almost said no. But then he surprised himself by telling her the truth. He told her about the invitation, about his past relationship, about how strange it felt to be invited to a moment that belonged to a life he no longer lived. He didn't expect advice. He just spoke. She listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. She didn't judge him or give simple answers. Instead, she said something quiet and honest. She said sometimes facing something uncomfortable helps people understand what they have been avoiding. Her words stayed with him. Over the next few days, the invitation stayed on his mind. He thought about going alone, but the idea felt heavy. He thought about not going at all, but that felt like running away. Without fully planning it, he asked the Apache woman if she would go with him. The question surprised both of them. She didn't answer right away. She looked at him carefully, not suspicious, but serious. She asked why he wanted her there. He paused, realizing he didn't have a clear answer. He finally said the truth. He didn't want to face the past alone, and he trusted her presence. She considered this. Going meant stepping into a world that wasn't hers, surrounded by people who might look at her with curiosity or quiet judgment. She had learned to be cautious, but she also believed in experiences that brought growth, even if they were uncomfortable. After some thought, she agreed. As the day approached, both felt a growing tension they didn't name. The rancher wondered if he was doing the right thing. The Apache woman wondered how she would be seen and how much of herself she would have to explain. Neither talked much about these thoughts, but they felt them. The night before they left, the ranch was unusually quiet. They finished their work early. As the sun went down, they sat outside, sharing a simple meal. The air was cool and the sky stretched wide above them. In that quiet moment, both understood that this trip was not just about a wedding. It was about standing in unfamiliar places, about being seen, about understanding who they were becoming. Neither knew how it would change them, but both sensed that something important was beginning. And with that unspoken understanding, the first step forward was taken. The morning they left the ranch arrived sooner than either of them expected. The sky was still pale when the rancher loaded a small bag into his truck. He moved carefully, as if sudden motions might wake thoughts he was not ready to face. The Apache woman stood nearby, holding her own bag. She looked calm on the outside, but inside her mind was busy. Leaving the ranch, even for a short time, felt like stepping out of a space where she knew who she was. The drive began quietly. The road stretched long and straight, cutting through open land. At first, neither spoke. The truck's engine and the sound of tires on the road filled the silence. The rancher kept his eyes forward, focused, while the Apache woman watched the changing land outside the window. After some time, the rancher spoke. He mentioned small things, the weather, the road, a place they passed. His voice sounded normal, but beneath it was a tension he could not hide. She answered politely, matching his tone. Slowly, the silence softened. Words came easier. As the miles passed, their conversation grew deeper without effort. He spoke about his childhood on the ranch, how he learned to work with animals before he fully understood people. He explained how he had always believed that if he worked hard and stayed steady, life would sort itself out. She listened closely, seeing parts of him he had never shared openly. Then she spoke about her own life. She talked about growing up surrounded by stories, elders, and strong family ties. She spoke about the balance between holding on to tradition and learning to move through the wider world. She did not speak with bitterness, but with honesty. She explained how tiring it could be to always feel like she had to explain herself. The rancher listened carefully. He realized that while his world had been quiet and isolated, hers had required constant awareness. He respected her strength more deeply than before. As they got closer to the town where the wedding would take place, the Apache woman grew quieter. She watched buildings replace open land. The rancher noticed and asked if she was all right. She nodded, then admitted she felt unsure, not afraid but alert. She knew how quickly people judged what they did not understand. He told her she did not owe anyone explanations. His words were sincere, but he also wondered if he would live up to them when the moment came. They stopped at a small place to rest and eat. Sitting across from each other, away from the road, the reality of the trip felt stronger. People around them talked, laughed, and moved freely. The Apache woman noticed how easily others fit into this space. She reminded herself that she belonged wherever she chose to stand. The rancher excused himself briefly, stepping outside to make a call. It was a short conversation, but when he returned, his expression had changed. She asked if everything was okay. He hesitated, then admitted the call was from someone connected to his past. It stirred feelings he thought were long gone. She did not push for details. Instead, she offered quiet understanding. As they continued their journey, he became thoughtful. He wondered if bringing her had been fair. He worried that his unresolved history might place her in an uncomfortable position. But when he glanced at her, he saw her sitting tall, composed, present. She was not someone being dragged into a situation. She had chosen to be there. When they finally arrived in town, the atmosphere felt tight to him. Familiar streets brought memories rushing back. He remembered places he used to visit with his ex, moments that once felt important. Now they felt distant, like scenes from another life. They checked into a simple place to stay. Inside the quiet room, the Apache woman placed her bag down slowly, grounding herself. The rancher stood near the window, staring outside. The weight of tomorrow pressed on him. They talked that evening, sitting across from each other. He admitted his fears, of being judged, of feeling small, of realizing he had stayed stuck while others moved on. She listened, then shared her own concerns. She worried about being seen as an outsider, about people reducing her to a label instead of seeing her as a person. They agreed on one thing: they would face the day honestly. No pretending, no hiding. That night sleep came slowly. The rancher lay awake, replaying memories and imagining conversations that might never happen. The Apache woman lay still, breathing steadily, reminding herself that strength did not mean control over every outcome. The next morning arrived clear and bright. The wedding day had come. As they prepared, the tension grew. The rancher dressed carefully, choosing simple clothes that felt like himself rather than someone from his past. The Apache woman dressed with quiet confidence. She chose something that felt respectful but true to her. She looked at herself for a moment, not to judge but to center herself. When they met outside the room, they shared a brief look. No words were needed. They were both stepping into unfamiliar ground together. The drive to the venue was short but heavy. Cars lined the road. Voices and laughter drifted through the air. The rancher parked and turned off the engine. For a moment, neither moved. Then she spoke softly, asking if he was ready. He nodded, though he wasn't sure what ready meant. They stepped out together. As they walked toward the entrance, the Apache woman felt eyes on her. Some curious, some neutral, some unreadable. She kept her shoulders straight and her pace steady. She reminded herself that she was not there to impress anyone. The rancher noticed the looks too. For the first time, he fully understood what it meant to stand beside someone who was often judged before being known. He felt a protective instinct rise, but he knew protection also meant trust. He trusted her strength. Just before reaching the doors, she slowed her steps. The noise inside grew louder. Her heart beat a little faster. She turned to him and took a breath. That was when she asked the question that carried more weight than he expected. How should I introduce myself? The question was simple, but it held years of experience, caution, and dignity. She was not asking for permission. She was asking how he saw her. The rancher looked at her, really looked at her. In that moment, he realized this journey was no longer about his past. It was about how he chose to show up now. He understood that his answer would matter, not just for this moment, but for what came next. And standing there, on the edge of the room where his old life waited inside, he knew he could not answer lightly. He did not answer her right away. The noise from inside the building drifted toward them, soft music, light laughter, the sound of people greeting one another. The rancher felt the past pressing at his back and the present standing in front of him. He realized that her question was not small. It was not about words alone. It was about respect. He finally spoke, slowly and clearly. He told her to introduce herself the way she always did, with her name, with confidence, with no explanations. He said she did not need to be described by him or defined by anyone else. He added that if people wanted to know her, they could ask her directly. She studied his face, searching for honesty. She found it. The answer did not make everything easier, but it made it right. She nodded once, taking a steady breath, and stepped forward beside him. They entered together. The room was bright and full. Decorations filled the space, and familiar faces turned toward them. The rancher felt a wave of recognition and quiet surprise ripple through the crowd. Some people smiled politely. Others paused, curious. He noticed the looks more clearly than ever before, but instead of shrinking, he straightened his shoulders. Someone approached them almost immediately. A woman he knew from town greeted him warmly, then turned to the Apache woman with an expectant smile. The rancher waited, letting the space remain open. The Apache woman spoke calmly, introduced herself by name, and offered a polite greeting. Her voice did not shake. The woman nodded, accepting the moment as it was, and moved on. Small interactions followed. Some brief, some awkward, some kind. The Apache woman met each one with quiet strength. She answered questions when she chose to. She redirected conversations when needed. She did not perform. She simply existed. The rancher watched her with growing respect. He saw how much effort it took to remain steady in a room that felt unfamiliar. He also saw how natural her dignity was. She was not trying to prove anything. Soon he saw his ex across the room. She looked happy, not in a loud way but settled. She stood near her future partner, smiling as people congratulated them. The rancher felt a tightening in his chest, but it passed quickly. The feeling surprised him. He had expected something sharper. Instead, he felt clarity. She noticed him soon after. Her expression shifted briefly, then softened. She excused herself and walked toward him. They stood facing each other, surrounded by people yet strangely alone. She congratulated him on coming. He congratulated her on the day. Their voices were calm. No anger. No regret spoken aloud. She glanced at the Apache woman standing beside him. There was a pause, filled with curiosity but also respect. The Apache woman met her gaze evenly. The rancher did not interrupt. His ex asked how they knew each other. He explained simply, without details or defensiveness. The Apache woman added a few words of her own, honest and clear. The conversation ended politely. When his ex walked away, the rancher realized something important. He felt free. Not because the past was erased, but because it no longer controlled him. As the event continued, the Apache woman grew more at ease. She spoke with a few guests who showed genuine interest, not curiosity. She laughed softly at something someone said. The rancher noticed how her presence changed the way he moved through the room. He was more grounded, less careful. At one point, she stepped outside for air. He followed after a moment. The light outside was softer, the noise distant. She leaned against a railing, breathing deeply. He asked if she was okay. She nodded, then admitted it was tiring but not unbearable. She said the hardest part was not the people. It was the constant decision of how much to give, how much to keep. He listened. He realized how often he had taken ease for granted. They stood there quietly for a while. Then she told him something she had never shared before. She spoke about moments in her life when she felt invisible, and others when she felt watched too closely. She explained how balance was something she learned, not something she was given. He thanked her for trusting him with that. He meant it. When they returned inside, the ceremony began. They sat among others, watching vows spoken, promises made. The rancher listened closely, not with longing but with understanding. He recognized the work behind commitment, the honesty it required. He glanced at the Apache woman beside him. She watched with a thoughtful expression, not judging, not dreaming, just present. After the ceremony, the mood lifted. Music played. People moved, talked, celebrated. Someone invited them to join a group conversation. They did. Someone else offered them food. They accepted. Time passed more easily than the rancher expected. At one point, an older man made a careless comment. It was not cruel, but it carried an assumption. The Apache woman responded calmly, correcting the idea without raising her voice. The man blinked, surprised, then apologized. The moment passed. The rancher felt something shift inside him. He realized that support did not always mean stepping in. Sometimes it meant standing beside and letting the other person lead. Later, as the gathering began to wind down, the rancher and his ex crossed paths one final time. This time, she thanked him for coming. She said it meant more than she expected. He replied honestly that he was glad he did. There were no promises, no reopening of doors. Just closure. As they left the venue, the air felt lighter. The Apache woman walked beside him, quiet but steady. He asked how she felt. She thought for a moment before answering. She said she felt proud, not because she impressed anyone, but because she stayed true to herself. He smiled at that. The drive back to their place was calm. The road was darker now, but familiar. The rancher realized that something important had changed, though he could not yet name it. He no longer felt pulled backward. He felt present. When they arrived, they sat for a moment in the parked truck. Neither rushed inside. He thanked her for coming, for trusting him, for being herself. She accepted his thanks, then added something of her own. She said that the way he answered her question earlier had mattered. It told her she was seen. That stayed with him. As they stepped inside, both knew this day was not an ending. It was a turning point. Something honest had begun, not spoken aloud, not rushed, but real. And in the quiet that followed, they both understood that moving forward would require the same courage they had shown today. The morning after the wedding felt different from the days before it. The rancher woke early, as he always did, but his thoughts were clearer. The weight he had carried for years felt lighter, as if something inside him had finally settled. Outside, the land looked the same, wide, quiet, waiting, but he felt changed as he stepped into the day. The Apache woman woke a little later. She lay still for a moment, listening to the sounds around her. The place was quiet but not empty. Her body felt tired, yet her mind was calm. The memories of the wedding moved through her slowly, no longer sharp or heavy. She felt relief, not because the day was over, but because she had faced it honestly. They met outside near the truck, both holding cups of coffee. There was an ease between them that had not been there before. No rush, no tension, just shared space. The drive back to the ranch was peaceful. The road felt familiar again, and the open land welcomed them back. The Apache woman watched the horizon and felt grounded. This place, though not her home, had become a space where she felt respected. That mattered. When they arrived, the ranch greeted them with its usual demands. Animals needed care. Fences needed checking. Work waited patiently. They changed clothes and moved into their roles without speaking much, but there was a quiet understanding between them. They worked side by side, their movements natural and in rhythm. As the day went on, the rancher noticed small changes in himself. He was more patient, more aware. He caught himself smiling without reason. He realized that the past no longer interrupted his thoughts. Instead, he found himself thinking about the present and the future. The Apache woman noticed changes too. She felt more comfortable speaking her mind. When she suggested a better way to handle a task, she did not hesitate. The rancher listened and agreed. Their cooperation felt balanced, not forced. Later that afternoon, as the sun lowered, they took a break. Sitting near the fence, they talked quietly. He asked her how she felt now that everything had passed. She thought carefully before answering. She said the experience had been tiring but meaningful. It had reminded her that standing firm did not always require fighting. Sometimes it required simply being present. He nodded. He understood that now. He then spoke about his ex, not with emotion but with clarity. He admitted that seeing her happy had helped him let go. He realized that what they had shared belonged to a different time, and that holding onto it had only kept him from growing. The Apache woman listened, offering no judgment. She appreciated his honesty. It told her he was not hiding from himself anymore. As days passed, their routine settled again, but something had shifted beneath it. They talked more openly, shared stories more freely, laughed more often, yet neither rushed to name what was growing between them. They both understood that some things needed time. Still, not everything was simple. The Apache woman began to think more deeply about her place on the ranch. She valued her independence. She had learned to rely on herself, to move carefully in spaces that were not built with her in mind. While she cared about the rancher, she did not want to lose herself or feel tied to expectations. The rancher, too, felt uncertainty. He respected her strength and did not want to assume anything. He worried about crossing boundaries or placing pressure where none belonged. He wanted to be honest, but he also wanted to be careful. One evening, after a long day, they sat together outside as the sky darkened. The air was cool and the land was quiet. The moment felt important. She spoke first. She told him that the wedding had made her think about how easily people placed others into roles without asking. She said she needed space in her life, to choose her own path, even if it changed direction later. He listened closely. He told her he understood. He said he did not want to own or control anything about her life. He valued her presence because she chose to be there, not because she owed him anything. Her expression softened. That mattered to her. They spoke late into the night, sharing thoughts they had kept inside. He spoke about fear of repeating old mistakes, fear of losing something good by holding too tightly or too loosely. She spoke about trust, how hard it was to give, and how important it was when earned. The conversation did not solve everything, but it built something stronger than answers, understanding. Over the next few weeks, the ranch faced challenges. Weather shifted, work increased, stress tested patience. Through it all, they supported each other in quiet ways. He stepped in when she needed rest. She stepped forward when he felt overwhelmed. They did not keep score. One day, a visitor from town came by unexpectedly. The rancher noticed the Apache woman grow slightly distant, her posture changing. Later, she admitted that attention from outsiders still made her cautious. He told her she did not need to explain herself. He reminded her that the ranch was a place where she was valued. That reassurance stayed with her. As time passed, she realized something important. The ranch was no longer just a place of work. It had become a place where she felt seen without being watched, respected without being questioned. That was rare. The rancher realized something too. For the first time in a long while, he was not afraid of the future. He did not feel the need to rush toward it or hide from it. He felt steady, rooted, open. One evening, as they finished their work and watched the sun set, he turned to her and spoke honestly. He told her that whatever came next, he wanted it to be built on respect and choice. No pressure, no expectations forced by fear or loneliness. She appreciated his words. She told him she was not ready to define anything yet, but she cared deeply about the path they were walking together. That was enough for now. The land grew quieter as night settled in. They sat side by side, not touching but close. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with shared understanding. Both knew that life would continue to challenge them, that choices would need to be made, that growth was never easy. But they also knew this. They had faced something difficult together and come through with honesty intact. And whatever waited ahead, they would meet it with the same quiet courage that had carried them this far. Meaning behind those days had changed. The work was still hard, the morning still early, yet both of them felt more awake to their lives than before. They were no longer just passing through time. They were choosing how to stand inside it. The Apache woman began to plan her next steps more clearly. She had always believed in movement, in learning, in not staying still out of fear. One afternoon, while they were fixing a fence together, she told the rancher that she had been thinking about the future. She said she might want to take classes nearby to build skills she could carry anywhere. She spoke carefully, watching his reaction. He did not interrupt. When she finished, he nodded and said he was glad she was thinking about herself. He told her that whatever path she chose, it should be one that made her feel strong and honest. He offered support, not promises. That mattered more to her than anything else he could have said. Later that evening, she reflected on that conversation. In the past, she had often felt pressure when sharing her plans, as if her choices needed approval. This time felt different. She felt free to imagine her future without fear of disappointing someone else. The rancher, too, was changing. He began to look at the land differently, not just as a place to work, but as something he could share. He realized that for years, he had used routine as a shield. Now, he wanted more connection, more intention. He started reaching out to people again, rebuilding friendships he had let fade. He felt ready to live fully instead of simply enduring. One weekend, they attended a small gathering in town together. It was nothing formal, just neighbors and familiar faces. This time, the Apache woman felt less guarded. She spoke when she wanted to and stayed quiet when she didn't. People greeted her as someone who belonged, not as a curiosity. The rancher noticed the change and felt proud, not in a possessive way, but in a quiet, human way. On the drive back, they talked about how different that night felt compared to the wedding. She said it was because she no longer felt like she was stepping into someone else's story. She felt like she was standing in her own. As weeks turned into months, the seasons shifted. The land responded as it always did. There were moments of exhaustion, moments of frustration, and moments of deep peace. Through all of it, they stayed honest with each other. When one of them felt unsure, they said so. When one of them needed space, it was respected. One evening, after a long day, they sat together watching the sky darken. The air was calm. The Apache woman spoke softly, saying she was grateful, not just for the ranch, but for the way she had been treated there. She said it was rare to find a place where strength was not mistaken for distance. The rancher listened, then spoke from the heart. He said that meeting her had taught him something important. He had spent years thinking that stability meant staying the same. Now he understood that real stability came from growth, from listening, from allowing life to change you. They sat in silence for a long time after that. The silence was not empty. It was full of trust. Eventually, a decision came. The Apache woman chose to move closer to town to begin her studies. It was not an easy choice. Leaving the ranch felt like closing a meaningful chapter, but it also felt right. She wanted to move forward with confidence, not regret. The day she packed her things, the rancher helped without speaking much. When everything was ready, they stood outside near the truck. There were no dramatic words, no promises made out of fear, just honesty. She thanked him for respect, for patience, for seeing her as she was. He thanked her for reminding him how to live openly, for helping him let go of the past without bitterness. Before she left, she told him that whatever the future held, the ranch would always be a place where she felt grounded. He told her the door would always be open, not as an obligation but as a choice. When she drove away, the rancher felt sadness but not loss. He knew this was not an ending born from distance or misunderstanding. It was a turning shaped by growth. Life continued. They stayed in touch. Sometimes they talked often, sometimes less. There was no pressure. Each conversation felt intentional, honest. Months later, when she returned to visit, the reunion felt natural, no catching up filled with tension. Just shared stories, shared laughter, shared understanding. They walked the land together, noticing how much and how little had changed. Standing there, both of them understood something clearly. What they had built was not dependent on constant closeness. It was built on respect, choice, and truth. The rancher no longer lived in the shadow of his past. The Apache woman no longer felt the need to ask how to introduce herself. Each of them had learned to stand fully in their own name. And that, more than any single moment, was the real beginning.